In this video, we are going to learn the 7 laws of Noah with all its details and complexity. The 7 laws of Noah is the laws from the Bible, the Jewish Bible called the Torah, that all non-Jews should keep. Jews should keep all the commandments in the entire Torah, which is a total of 613 commandments. Now, even though non-Jews only have to keep 7 laws, the punishment for not keeping these laws is the death penalty, both in this world and in the world to come. If, however, non-Jews keep the 7 laws of Noah, then they will live both in this world and in the world to come. And thus it is essential for all non-Jews to know the information that I will be sharing with you in this video. So definitely give this video a like, which will help this video spread to all the non-Jews around the world. Also share this video with any non-Jew that you know, as the information that I will give in this video will be all the information that you need to keep the 7 laws of Noah properly, which God commanded all non-Jews to keep. Now, if you want a brief overview of the 7 laws of Noah and why non-Jews only need to keep 7 laws, then I've already made a video that you can watch by clicking on this link above. This video, however, will be much more comprehensive and will cover all the details of these 7 laws. When does the death penalty apply? When does it not apply? Also, throughout this video, I will be making a lot of references to the actual Torah, to the Jewish Bible, and luckily for all of you, I've already made a video of the entire Torah read in its original Hebrew with the English translation below every word. So if you want to look something up, then you can definitely refer to that video, which I will link for you above. Now, if you are someone that don't just want to keep the 7 laws of Noah and be a Noahite or a righteous non-Jew, but to keep the entire Torah, the entire Jewish Bible, with the 613 commandments that comes with it, then a question you might be asking is, but can I be Jewish? Now, I already made a video about that, which I will link for you above, that will answer that question for you in much more detail. But in this video, we are going to focus on the 7 laws of Noah, the 7 laws that all non-Jews must keep. And if they keep these 7 laws, then they will have a share in the world to come. Now, this video will be quite a lengthy video because there is a lot to cover. And what we're going to do is we are going to learn these 7 laws with all its details from one of the greatest rabbis and halachic authorities that ever lived. He is called by the acronym the RAMBAM, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. This is a Sephardic rabbi that lived about 1,000 years ago, and he wrote many works. His 2 most popular works is The Guide to the Perplexed, which is more of a philosophy work, but also goes into great detail of why does the Torah give physicality when we all know that God is not physical, and many such questions. And all these books that I reference, I will link in the description below, and will also try to pin it in the first comment of this video. His second work, and his most famous work, is the Mishneh Torah, which lists the 613 commandments that all Jews must keep in a very structured way. Thus, the Rambam is definitely someone that you can rely on as a halachic authority in the Jewish world and in Jewish law. Just to illustrate this, the Yemenites follow the Rambam exclusively. Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews follow the Shulchan Aruch, which is the codified book of Jewish law. The Shulchan Aruch was compiled by Rabbi Yosef Karo, who lived 400 years ago in Sfat, in the north of Israel. What Rabbi Yosef Karo did is he took three of the main opinions of Jewish law in the Jewish world. He took the Rosh, the Rif, and the RAMBAM, and thus most of the Shulchan Aruch is the opinion of the RAMBAM. This Shulchan Aruch that contains the RAMBAM is followed by all Sephardic Jews in the world. The Ashkenazi Jews have another rabbi that commented on the Shulchan Aruch, who is called the Ramah, who lived at the same time as Rabbi Yosef Karo, and this is normally the opinion that the Ashkenazi Jews follow. And thus you can rest assured that anything that we learn today in this video from the Rambam, from his Mishneh Torah, is accepted by all Jews in the world. And the book we're going to learn from is this book. Like I mentioned, there's several books in the Mishneh Torah. This book has both the Hebrew and the English side by side. And this book is called Sefer Shoftim, the book of Judges. And in this book, Sefer Shoftim, the book of Judges, we are going to look at Hilchot Melachim Umilchamoteim, which directly translates into the laws of kings and their wars. And we are going to specifically deal with chapter 9 and chapter 10 of Hilchot Melachim Umilchamoteim, where the Rambam lists the 7 laws of Noah and goes into detail of how these 7 laws should be kept by non-Jews, with all the details of the laws. We will also be looking at the notes, which will be adding another layer of detail from several rabbis that commented on the Mishneh Torah, clarifying some of the statements that the Rambam made. Now, in the previous video I made, which was a brief overview of the 7 laws of Noah, I listed the 7 laws as they appear in the Torah, as they appear in the Jewish Bible. The Rambam does not follow this structure in the Mishneh Torah. And since we are learning from the Rambam, we will be going according to his structure. Now, I'm trying to make this video as short as possible. And I do know that this will be a very long video because we will be covering 2 chapters in the Mishneh Torah. And thus I will only mention what is relevant for you as non-Jews, as the Rambam also lists things that is relevant to Jews, which is not the purpose of this video. So first of all, the Rambam lists the 7 laws of Noah. This is the beginning of chapter 9 of Hilchot Melachim Umilchamoteim. 6 precepts were commanded to Adam. The first, the prohibition against worship of false gods. Number 2, the prohibition against cursing God. Number 3, the prohibition against murder. Number 4, the prohibition against incest and adultery. Number 5, the prohibition against theft. Number 6, the command to establish laws and courts of justice. Then the Rambam adds, even though we have received all these commands from Moses, and furthermore, they are concepts which intellect itself tends to accept, it appears from the Torah's words that Adam was commanded concerning them, meaning concerning these 6 laws that the Rambam already mentioned. Then the Rambam lists the last of the 7 laws, which is the prohibition against eating flesh from a living animal. This was added for Noah, as it states in Genesis 9 verse 4. Nevertheless, you may not eat flesh with its life, with its blood. And thus there are a total of 7 commandments that the non-Jews should keep. Now, a very important statement here by the Rambam, which is something I've already mentioned in the previous video, is the 7 laws of Noah is something that a human being should know without having the Torah. In Judaism, we believe in a God that is just and fair, and thus God cannot expect you to keep the Torah if He never gave you the Torah. And thus the 7 laws are laws that human beings would know naturally. If we look at the list of the 7 laws, things like theft, for example. I don't want people to take things that belong to me, and thus naturally I know it's wrong to take something that belongs to someone else. I know that I don't want to be killed, so naturally I shouldn't be killing other people. I know that I don't want someone else sleeping with my wife, and thus I should know naturally that I shouldn't sleep with someone else's wife. And it's clear that you don't need the Torah to know these concepts naturally. And that is why God expects non-Jews to follow these 7 laws of Noah, which is a system of morality and justice to make the world a better place. Now we as Jews are also obligated to teach these 7 laws with all its detail to non-Jews. And that is something that I am trying to do in this very video. As I mentioned, if you keep these 7 laws, you will be blessed in this world and you will have a share in the world to come. If you do not keep these 7 laws, you should be killed in this world and you will not have a share in the world to come. And now we will go through the 7 laws of Noah in all its details and defining exactly what each of these laws mean and when are you punishable by death and when are you not punishable by death. Or in other words, what do you need to do specifically to transgress one of these commandments and thus also lose your share in the world to come, God forbid. At the end, the RAMBAM will also list some of the prohibitions which is not from the Torah but is from the oral tradition, which many of you might have heard about, like the prohibition against non-Jews keeping the Sabbath or learning Torah. And we'll explain that in a lot more detail towards the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. Now the RAMBAM will go into detail about the 7 laws of Noah. He starts with the prohibition against worshipping of false gods. And he states, a Gentile who worships false gods is liable provided he worships them in the accepted manner. A Gentile is executed for every type of foreign worship which a Jewish court would consider worthy of capital punishment. However, a Gentile is not executed for type of foreign worship which a Jewish court would not deem worthy of capital punishment. Nevertheless, even though a Gentile will not be executed for these forms of worship, he is forbidden to engage in all of them. So first a little bit of explanation there. In idol worship, Avodah Zarah it's called in Hebrew, strange worship, you only get the death penalty if you perform it the way that this idol is worshipped. So let's, for example, take Buddhism. Buddhism, they bow down to Buddha. This is the way you worship Buddha. If you were to do such a thing, and this is the accepted practice of worshipping Buddha, then that is complete idol worship and you will get the death penalty. In Hinduism, for example, you light incense and pray to the idol. This is the way you worship this idol. If you were to do it in such a fashion, then you would receive the death penalty. Now, many people might wonder about Christianity. According to the Yemenites and the Sephardic opinion, Christianity is complete idol worship. And thus, if you were to practice Christianity, then you should receive the death penalty. And also, like with all the others, not have a share in the world to come. The Ashkenazi opinion is different, and I already made a video with my rabbi, Yitzchak Steinberg, who is the Rosh Kollel of Eretz Chemda, Ranana, which I will link for you in this video above. And it's clear from that video that according to Ashkenazi Judaism, it is not forbidden to worship God, one God, through a shituf, through a partner, meaning to say that if you believe that there is only one God, and you are praying to this God, believing He is one, the one that created the heaven and the earth and everything that is within it, but you believe that this God has partners, not saying that there's more than one God, saying there's one God, but the way you get to this God is through an intermediary, through a shituf, it's called in Hebrew. In the old days, this was quite common with the moon and the sun and the stars, for example. People used to worship the sun, the moon, and the stars, but they still believed there was one God. So, according to the Ashkenazi Jewish opinion, this is not idol worship, since you do recognize that there is only one God. Just you believe the way you get to this one God is through this intermediary. And thus, according to the Ashkenazi opinion, you will not receive the death penalty for being a Christian. There is, however, based on this RAMBAM and the 7 laws of Noah, there is a suffix, there is a doubt in regards to Catholic Christians. Since Catholic Christians is much more visual, so they will actually have a statue of Jesus on the cross. They will kiss the cross. They will take communion, which is bread basically that they're taking, which they say is the body of God. And they will drink wine, which they say is the blood of God. Because it is so visual, and they are connecting it straight to Jesus and saying Jesus is God, and it is not so clear that it is a 3-in-1 concept, but there seem to be 3 distinct gods, God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit, 3. They also add Mary, which is like a demigod for the Catholics. According to many opinions, Catholics, even according to Ashkenazi opinion, would be complete idol worship, and thus they, according to the 7 laws of Noah, will receive the death penalty both in this world and in the world to come. Now, this last statement that we read, nevertheless, even though a Gentile will not be executed for these forms of worship, he is forbidden to engage in all of them. He goes on to say we should not allow them to erect monuments or plant the Asherah tree, which is mentioned a lot in the Torah, or to make images and the like, even though they are only for the sake of beauty. Now, this is talking about doing something within a foreign religion, let's say, which is not the way you worship this God, but it is a way that you show appreciation to this God. Now, for this, you won't receive the death penalty, not in this world, nor in the world to come. But the RAMBAM is trying to say is it shouldn't be done, but if you do it, you will not receive the death penalty, and you still will have a share in the world to come. For example, Christians, according to the Ashkenazi opinion, kissing a cross. So that's not how you worship the false god, Jesus. That's how you show appreciation. Or let's say you have a cross around your neck as a non-Jew. Remember, all these laws are only for non-Jews. Let's say you have a cross around your neck or a cross in your house. This is not the way you worship your false god. This is the way that you show appreciation or beautify it. Then again, according to the Ashkenazi opinion, you would not receive the death penalty neither in this world nor in the world to come. According to the Sephardic and Yemenite opinion, you will receive the death penalty for praying to Jesus, for example, but not necessarily if you are wearing a cross or having a cross in your house, for example. The RAMBAM then moves on to the second law of the 7 laws of Noah, which is the prohibition against cursing God, where he states, a Gentile who curses God's name, whether he uses God's unique name or one of his other names in any language, is liable to the death penalty, both in this world and the world to come. So in the notes, also in the Mishneh Torah, in Hilchot Avodah Zarah 2:7, the RAMBAM explains that this refers to the name Adonai, which means my master, and of course the name Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey, which is only mentioned in the temple. Jews do not use this name at all, Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. And I see many comments on my channel, unfortunately, typing out what they think the name is, or how it should be spelled, or how it should be said. And according to the 7 laws of Noah, if you were to use both the first name I mentioned and the Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey, and you were to curse this name, then according to the 7 laws of Noah, you should be killed in this world and in the world to come. So the RAMBAM also adds here, as we have read, or any of his other names in any language is liable. So we call this kinui, which is basically any name used to describe God and not necessarily one of the 7 names. There's many names for God in the Bible, like Elohim, for example, which can also mean judges. And then a name that you would see often on mezuzahs, on things that we put on our doorposts, you will see there's a Shin, Dalet, and a Yud, which is Shaddai, which is the attribute of God's power. So basically, if you were to use any of the names of God that you find in the Torah, which I would all advise you not to try to type it out, not to mention it in a comment, which is also against the prohibition that you shouldn't use the name of God in vain. And that is why Jews do not use these names in vain. The only reason I can mention it in this video is because I asked my rabbi, and he said for teaching purposes, you can use the names except Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey, which I've already mentioned can only be said in the temple, which, please God, should be rebuilt soon. But if you use any of these names, including in other languages, like God, for example, and you curse God by saying, for example, God, then according to the 7 laws of Noah, you should die in this world and in the world to come. The 4th law that the RAMBAM lists in the 7 laws of Noah is the prohibition against murder. And the RAMBAM states, a Gentile who slays any soul, even a fetus in its mother's womb, should be executed in retribution for its death. Similarly, if he slew a person who would have otherwise died in the near future, placed the person before a lion, or starved the person to death, he should be executed, for through one manner or another he killed. Similarly, one should be executed if he killed a pursuer when he could have saved the latter's potential victim by maiming one of the pursuer's limbs. So let's go through that law in a little bit more detail. So basically, if you kill someone, and you do so, the notes add, intentionally, then you should be killed, and you will have no share in the world to come. Also, the RAMBAM stated, even a fetus in its mother's womb. Now this is obviously talking about abortion. So abortion is not allowed in Judaism. And it's also not allowed for non-Jews. So if a non-Jew were to abort a baby, meaning to kill the baby in the mother's womb, then you should be killed in this world, and you will not have a share in the world to come. Now this only applies if the mother's life is not in danger. If the mother's life is in danger, then you can abort the child, you can kill the child. Because the mother's life in Judaism comes first. Because the Torah states these are the laws that you might live by them. Meaning that you shouldn't die because of these laws. And that is the only exception for abortion or killing a baby in the mother's womb for non-Jews. And how do we know that a non-Jew should be killed if the non-Jew kills intentionally or kills a baby in a mother's womb, it says in Genesis 9 verse 6, "Who spills human blood shall have his own blood spilled." And that is the source for this law. Now the other statement from the RAMBAM that we read out, similarly, if he slew a person who would have otherwise died in the near future, this is called today euthanasia, which many people call mercy killing or mercy death, meaning that someone's already about to die, you are just quickening the process. If you do such a thing, then you should be killed in this world and in the world to come. And the last part of the statement, where the Rambam states, if you placed a person before a lion or starved a person to death, he should be executed, for through one manner or another he killed. In these cases that he lists here, you didn't directly kill the person. You put the person in a lion's den, for example. Now, obviously the lion's going to kill the person, but you didn't kill the person. So you could say, look, I didn't kill him. The lion killed him. According to the 7 laws of Noah, if you do such a thing, you should be killed and you will not have a share in the world to come. Or, if you starve someone to death, put the person in a room, don't feed them, they have no way to eat, so eventually they will die, but you personally didn't kill them. You just didn't let them have food or, let's say, water. Then according to the 7 laws of Noah, you should be killed in this world and you will have no share in the world to come. And the last part, similar, one should be executed if he killed a pursuer when he could have saved the latter's potential victim by maiming one of the pursuer's limbs. So when does this apply? So first of all, in Jewish law, if someone is coming to kill you or rape you, you are allowed to kill that person. This is also in the Mishneh Torah, in Hilchot Rotzeach 1:6-12. However, this leniency that the Torah gives you to kill someone that is pursuing you or wanting to rape you only applies if you have no other choice. It's like a last resort. And this is why he adds here, if you could, for example, have shot the person's leg, for example, that's now coming after you, and you didn't do so, then you will also be liable for death in this world and the world to come. Obviously, someone's coming after you to kill you or to rape you, and you have no other choice. There's no way to slow this person down, too close maybe. Then you are allowed to kill the person, and you will not be liable, meaning this law of you shall not murder wouldn't apply to you because you were just defending yourself. The 4th law of the 7 laws of Noah that the RAMBAM mentions is the prohibition against incest and adultery. So what is incest and adultery for non-Jews? The laws for incest and adultery is much more lenient for non-Jews than it is for Jews. For non-Jews, there is only 6 sexual transgressions that is not allowed. And if you were to perform any of these 6 transgressions, then you should be killed in this world and you will have no share in the world to come. And hopefully no one is doing any of this. It's relations with your mother, relations with your father's wife, relations with a married woman, relations with a maternal sister, relations with a male, which unfortunately many non-Jews are doing. And as is clear from the 7 laws of Noah, if you do such a thing, you should die in this world and you will have no share in the world to come. And the last one is relations with an animal, bestiality. Now, where do we get this law from the Torah? All these 6 prohibitions are derived from the verse in Genesis 2, verse 24, where it says, "Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother, and cling to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." So let's broaden out that passage that we just read. His father alludes to his father's wife. His mother is to be understood simply. You can't have relations with your mother. Cling to his wife and not to someone else's wife. His wife and not the man. And then last is, they shall become one flesh. This excludes animals, because a man cannot become one flesh with an animal. Now the Rambam does go into a little bit more detail into each of these categories of forbidden sexual relations, but I think what we have already stated is pretty clear, which is if you have relations with your mother, your father's wife, your maternal sister, a male or an animal, then you should be killed in this world and you will have no share in the world to come. I think that is pretty clear and it doesn't need any further explanation. The one that I think does need a little bit more explanation is you can't have relations with a married woman. But according to Jewish law, what is a married woman exactly? And when does this law apply? So we will go a little bit more in detail on the subject of adultery. So the Rambam states, a Gentile is not executed for adultery with his colleague's wife unless they engage in relations in the normal manner after she had engaged in relations with her husband at least once. So unfortunately, to explain this clearly, we will have to be a little bit explicit in this video. Jews generally don't like to be explicit in these manners, and we use a lot of creative language to not say something exactly how it is written because of modesty laws. But for you to understand this clearly, we will be explicit in this video, and I did ask my rabbi, and he said I should give it over in a way that the non-Jewish world will understand. So when the Rambam says that you only deserve death in this world and in the world to come if you commit the act of adultery in the normal manner, it means that you only do it through the normal manner. Meaning that if you have intercourse, anally for example, with a woman, then this is not considered the normal way to do it. The normal way would be vaginal. So if you were to do it in this way, with someone else's wife, after he has already been with her at least once in the normal way, vaginally, then you should be killed in this world and you will have no share in the world to come. The Rambam goes on to say, however, if she was merely consecrated, which is basically like engaged in today's language, or has undergone a wedding ceremony, meaning she actually got married, but had never engaged in relations with her husband, one is not liable for engaging in relations with her. And this is learned from a verse in the Torah in Genesis 20 verse 3 that states, for she has been possessed by her husband. Meaning, in plain language, if a woman was engaged to another man, or even married to another man, but they had no intercourse, then if you were to sleep with this woman, have intercourse in the normal way with this woman, even though such an act would be wrong, you would not receive the death penalty for this as a non-Jew, and you will not lose your share in the world to come. Now this only applies if this woman is a non-Jew. But if you were to have, God forbid, as a non-Jew, sexual relations with a married Jewish woman, whether you do it in the normal way or the abnormal way, which we have already explained in this video, I'm not going to say it again, and then you do deserve death in this world and you will have no share in the world to come. And this just shows the severity of a non-Jew being with a Jewish woman. The Rambam goes on to say, a Gentile who engages in relations with an unmarried Jewish woman who is a virgin, this non-Jew should be stoned to death and will obviously not have a share in the world to come. If a non-Jew were to have sexual relations with a Jewish woman after she has been married, but she hasn't been with her husband yet, then that person should be strangled to death and obviously will have no share in the world to come. And if a non-Jew were to be with a Jewish woman that was married and that has been with her husband at least once, then that non-Jew should be decapitated and will have no share in the world to come, which is a similar law if a non-Jew were to be with a non-Jewish woman in the normal manner after she was married and after she has been with her husband once. Basically, if you are not Jewish, leave Jewish women alone. That's what I would strongly advise. Then the RAMBAM moves on to the fifth law of the 7 laws of Noah, which is the prohibition against theft, against stealing. Now here especially the punishment for non-Jews is much more severe than it is for Jews. The RAMBAM states, a Gentile is liable for violating the prohibition against theft, whether he stole from another Gentile or from a Jew. And here, meaning he's liable for the death penalty and he will have no share in the world to come. This applies to one who forcefully robs an individual or steals money, a kidnapper, an employer who withholds his workers' wages and the like, even a worker who eats from his employer's produce when he's not working. In all such cases, he is liable and is considered as a robber. So I think that is pretty self-explanatory. I'll just point out here where it says, which we just read out, an employer who withholds his workers' wages and the like. This and the like, the notes point out, for example, withholding rent due to a landlord, or the fee charged for the hire of a utensil or other property. Meaning if you don't pay rent, which someone is waiting for, that money, that for non-Jews carries the death penalty and you lose your share in the world to come. So it's much more severe than for Jews. And the next statement that we read out, even a worker who eats from his employer's produce when he is not working. So obviously there's extra words added, when he is not working, implying that when he is working, it would seem to be okay to eat from the produce of his employer. And here the note states, this is from Devarim 23 verse 25, where it grants a worker the privilege of eating from the produce he is harvesting. Meaning if you're working on a farm and you are picking apples, then the Torah states that you can eat these apples while you're working. However, this right is only given while he is actually working. Afterwards, taking this produce is forbidden. And according to the 7 laws of Noah, if you were to do such a thing, you deserve the death penalty in this world and you will lose your share in the world to come. The next law that the RAMBAM covers in the Mishneh Torah is actually the 7th law, which is eating the flesh of a living animal. And he actually skips the 6th law, which is the command to establish laws and courts of justice, which he will cover at the end. So the RAMBAM states, a Gentile is liable for violating the prohibition against eating a limb or flesh from a living creature. This applies regardless of the amount involved, for the specifications of minimum amounts only apply to Jews. A Gentile is permitted blood from a living creature, which Jews are obviously prohibited against. So let's go over that in a little bit more detail. So first of all, the source for this prohibition can be found in Genesis 9 verse 4, where it states, "You may not eat flesh with its life, which is its blood." Now we learn in the Talmud in Sanhedrin 59a that obviously a Jew can't have any blood, and that's why we have so many laws for kosher meat. But for non-Jews, this verse does not prohibit a Gentile from drinking blood taken from a living animal. Now basically this means that a non-Jew can't eat the limb or the flesh of an animal that is still alive, whether it is a domestic animal, a wild animal. He is not allowed to eat this meat. But when he slaughters the animal as a non-Jew, then he is allowed to drink this blood as a non-Jew. Obviously, Jews are strictly prohibited to do this. We cannot do it at all. But here the law, again, is a little bit more lenient for non-Jews. Why anyone wants to drink blood, I'm not sure. But you will not receive, as a non-Jew, the death penalty in this world. And you will not lose your share in the world to come if you do drink blood of an animal. Now we said that you can't eat the limb or the flesh of a living animal. But what is a living animal? When is the animal considered dead? So the RAMBAM says, though one slaughters an animal, even if one severs the two signs, as long as the animal moves convulsively, the limbs and meat which are separated from it are forbidden to a Gentile, a non-Jew, because of the prohibition against a limb from a living creature. So just to add a little bit more detail in the notes, a cautious slaughter, you must cut through the carotid arteries, which sits in the front, as well as the trachea, which is the windpipe. And if you do this, then the animal dies basically instantly. But even if you have done this as a non-Jew, which is a kosher slaughter, but the animal's limbs are still moving. Many times when you shecht the animal, when you slaughter an animal, the animal still kicks. You can take a chicken's head off, put it down, and it still runs. Then you can't eat the flesh of such an animal or the limbs of such an animal until this animal stops moving. That is considered a dead animal for non-Jews. And if you were to eat it before that, then you will go against this seventh and last law of the 7 laws of Noah, and you will be liable for the death penalty in this world, and you will have no share in the world to come. The RAMBAM then goes on to explain the 6th law of the 7 laws of Noah, which he lists here last, which is the law to establish courts of justice for non-Jews. So what does that exactly mean? So the RAMBAM says, how must the non-Jews fulfill the commandment to establish laws and courts? They are obligated to set up judges and magistrates in every major city to render judgment concerning these 6 mitzvot, these 6 commandments, and to admonish the people regarding their observance. So this is based on a verse in Genesis 34 verse 13, and the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, who also lived 1,000 years ago, he was also a doctor, he disagrees with the RAMBAM, with Maimonides in this statement, and he says that these courts of justice that non-Jews must establish is not just to observe these 6 commandments that was listed earlier, but basically to deal with civil matters. So there's a little bit of a dispute here exactly what these courts of justice must do between 2 great Rishonim, which is the RAMBAM, Maimonides, and the Ramban, Nachmanides. Then the RAMBAM, Maimonides, we're back to the RAMBAM, Maimonides in the Mishneh Torah. he ends off with, a Gentile who transgresses these 7 commandments shall be executed by decapitation. For this reason, all the inhabitants of Shechem were obligated to die. Shechem kidnapped. The people observed and were aware of the deeds of Shechem, but did not judge him. Now, this is obviously the story in the Torah where Shechem captures the daughter of Yaakov, Dinah, and then rapes Dinah. And then afterwards, both Shechem and the entire city was killed by Shimon and Levi. And this story can be found in Genesis chapter 33, verse 18. Now again, we have a little bit of a disagreement between two great Rishonim, between the RAMBAM Maimonides and the Ramban Nachmanides. And the Ramban says he does not accept this interpretation from the Rambam, from Maimonides, and he notes that Yaakov severely reprimanded his sons for their behavior and did not forgive them, even on his deathbed. And the Ramban states that if Shimon and Levi acted as they should have acted, by killing Shechem and the entire city of Shechem, then first of all Yaakov wouldn't have reprimanded them, and especially not in this fashion. But again, the details of that story and this machloket, this disagreement between these two great Rishonim, is beyond the scope of this video. Another important thing which the Rambam ends off with in chapter 9 is a Gentile is executed on the basis of the testimony of one witness, a single witness, and the verdict of a single judge. Also, a non-Jew does not have to be warned before, and even relatives may serve as witnesses. However, a woman may not serve as a witness or a judge for them. So this differs a lot from how the Jewish court system works. So for a non-Jew, you need a single witness, a single judge, and then you can be sentenced to death. And almost anyone can testify except a woman. Even relatives can testify, where Jewish law is a lot more complicated. You can't have any relatives testify. Even the person that committed the act cannot testify and admit to it. And in general law, you need at least 2 witnesses, and they must be kosher witnesses, Shomer Shabbos, meaning they keep the Torah. And for capital offenses, Jewish law, you need at least 23 judges, which can be found in Hilchot Sanhedrin 5:2, also in the Mishneh Torah. Also, for non-Jews, they don't have to be warned before they commit the act. And this can be found in Hilchot Sanhedrin 12:1-2. Now, everything we've just mentioned, these 7 laws of Noah, with all its details, only applies if the non-Jew transgressed any of these 7 laws intentionally. Then they would receive the death penalty both in this world, and they will have no share in the world to come. In chapter 10, the Rambam discusses what happens if you did any of these acts unintentionally, and gives a lot of details about other things that is important to know for non-Jews. Now, we will go over these a little bit quicker, since we've already discussed the 7 laws of Noah in quite a bit of detail. So first, the Rambam in chapter 10 starts with a Gentile who inadvertently violates one of these commandments is exempt from all punishment, with the exception of a person who kills inadvertently. In such an instance, the Redeemer of blood is not executed for slaying the killer, nor may the latter seek asylum in a city of refuge. However, the court will not execute him. When does the above apply? When he inadvertently violates a command without sinful intention. For example, a person who engages in relations with his colleague's wife under the impression that she is his own wife or unmarried. If, however, one knew that she was his colleague's wife, but did not know that she was forbidden to him, or it occurred to him this act was permitted, or one killed without knowing that it's forbidden to kill, he is considered close to having sinned intentionally and is executed. This is not considered as an inadvertent violation, for he should have learned the obligations incumbent upon him, and he did not. So this is very important to remember in the 7 laws of Noah, is that you can't claim you did something unintentionally because you didn't know the 7 laws of Noah, for example. Because as we stated in the beginning of this video, the 7 laws of Noah should be natural to anyone. You know that if something doesn't belong to you, you shouldn't take it. You wouldn't want someone to take your own thing. That's the prohibition against theft, the prohibition against adultery. If you have a wife, you don't want someone sleeping with your wife. So why would you do that to another person? This you know without needing the Torah to tell you that. So you can't claim that you didn't know the law, and thus you shouldn't be killed in this world, and you should still receive your share in the world to come, since these 7 laws of Noah are natural laws which create a system of order and morality for all humankind. And thus God, that created the world, created morality and created the system for non-Jews, where if they keep these laws they will have a share in the world to come, and if they don't keep these laws they will not have a share in the world to come. But then the RAMBAM moves on to the next case, which is what happens if a non-Jew is forced by another person to violate one of these commandments. Should they then violate these commandments, or should they not, if they are forced, let's say, by someone to do it? So for Jews, there's 3 sins that you must give your life rather than commit. The one is idol worship, the second one is sexual immorality, and the third one is murder. For example, if someone tells a Jew, kill that person, if you kill that person, I will not kill you. A Jew is not permitted to kill that person. He should rather die than kill another. If someone tells a Jew to commit a sexual transgression in public, then a Jew should rather give his life than do such a thing. If a Jew is asked to perform idol worship, then he should rather give his life rather than do idol worship. For any other command in the Torah, which Jews should follow in normal circumstances, if they are threatened by death, for example, then the law of these are the laws that you might live by them and not die by them is then implied. This law kicks in, and you could transgress that particular law rather than give your life. For example, if someone tells a Jew, here's a piece of pork, eat the piece of pork, which Jews are forbidden to do, or here's blood, drink blood, which Jews are forbidden to do, and this person tells the Jew, if you do not do this, then I will kill you, then the Jew can sit, eat the piece of pork, rest assured that he didn't transgress a sin. He's actually following the Torah, which tells him these are the laws that you might live by them and not die by them. And the exception is the 3 cases that we mentioned, which is idol worship, sexual immorality, and murder. Any other command a Jew can transgress in order to save his life if he is forced to do so. A non-Jew, however, does not have to keep any of these laws of Noah if someone forces them not to keep it. meaning they should rather transgress these 7 laws of Noah than lose their life by keeping them. Also, another point that the RAMBAM mentions, similar to Jews, a non-Jewish minor, meaning a boy under the age of 13 and a girl under the age of 12, a deaf mute, someone that both cannot hear and cannot speak, or a fool, someone that is mentally challenged, is never given punishment, for they are not bound by any commandments. This is also very similar in Jewish law. So a non-Jew that is a minor, meaning below the age of 13 for a boy, below the age of 12 for a girl, someone that's both deaf and mute, or someone that is mentally challenged, these people will not receive the death penalty if they commit any of these transgressions that we mentioned in the 7 laws of Noah, because they are not bound by any commandments. Another case that the RAMBAM mentions is what happens if a non-Jew were to convert to Judaism, was circumcised, and went into a mikvah, immersed in a ritual bath, and afterwards decided to forsake God and revert to his previous status as a non-Jew. Is this person that was non-Jewish, converted, became Jewish, now wants to revert back to being non-Jewish? Is this person judged according to the 613 commandments of Jews, or is this person judged according to the 7 laws of non-Jews, since this person wants to be a non-Jew? So the RAMBAM states here that if a person were to convert to Judaism, non-Jewish to Jewish, that person can never go back to being a non-Jew, meaning that person will be judged for every single of the 630 commandments that he did not keep. And that is why it is so important to make sure that you want to be Jewish before you convert. Because once you convert and accept the 613 commandments upon yourself, there is no going back. You will be judged for every commandment that you transgressed or didn't keep. So you have to think very carefully before you actually go through the final conversion process, which is the circumcision and the ritual bath, the mikvah. But if a non-Jewish child were to convert before they became an adult, which in Judaism is 13 for a boy, 12 for a girl, and then he can go back to being a non-Jew, since in Jewish law a minor is not considered capable of making a decision by themselves, and thus they are seen as forced to convert by their parents, and thus they can go back. Normally, when a child converts, let's say a family wants to convert to Judaism, a mother, father, and let's say 2 kids. The boy is 10 and the girl is 9. They go through the conversion process, they finish their conversion at that age. When the girl reaches bat mitzvah, which means daughter of the commandments, at age 12, she's asked to read a statement and to go to the mikveh, to the ritual bath, where she then accepts the 613 commandments upon herself. The boy, when he reaches the age of 13, he must go through a similar procedure. Since in Judaism, you, as someone that's able to make a decision, must accept upon yourself the 613 commandments, and no one can do that for you. You cannot be forced to convert in Judaism, as was unfortunately the case with many Jews, where Christians basically gave Jews 2 options. Either you take Jesus, the Bible, yeah, or you take the sword, yeah. That was the options that was given to Jews. Same with the Muslims. The Muslims said either you accept Muhammad as the last prophet, or we will slaughter you. Jews do not have this in their history. We do not have forced conversion, since even if you were to go through a forced conversion, it wouldn't be accepted by a Jewish court of law as a valid conversion. Another case that the RAMBAM deals with is what happens with a non-Jew who converts after cursing God's name, worshipping false gods, engaging in relations with his colleague's wife, adultery, or killing a fellow non-Jew. What happens with such a person? So this person is exempt from the death penalty and will have a share in the world to come. But what happens if this non-Jew converted after killing a Jew or having relations with a Jew's wife? Then he is liable to the death penalty. He is decapitated for killing the Jew, which is the Jewish law, and strangled to death for engaging in relations with a Jew's wife, which is also Jewish law. He is given this punishment as a Jew because this is the laws that is governing him at this time. What we mentioned up until this point was the 7 laws of Noah as it is found in the Torah. But as you know, Jews also have an oral tradition that came with the Torah. According to this oral tradition, there is additional prohibitions for non-Jews. The first one that the RAMBAM lists is non-Jews are forbidden to crossbreed animals and graft different species of trees together. This is very similar to a law that also applies to Jews, which can be found in Leviticus 19 verse 19. And in Judaism this is called Kalaim. Now, if a non-Jew were to crossbreed animals or graft different species of trees together, the non-Jew cannot be executed for this violation, because a non-Jew can only be executed if they don't keep any of the 7 laws of Noah, which we have already mentioned. And only for these 7 laws they will lose their share in the world to come if they don't keep these laws. The things that we are mentioning now is things that non-Jews shouldn't do, but they will not receive the death penalty or lose their share in the world to come if they were to do it. That's the simple explanation of it. The RAMBAM lists another oral tradition which says a Gentile who gave a Jew a blow, means struck the Jew, is liable to die for causing even the most minimal damage. Nevertheless, he is not executed. And what the RAMBAM means here with a Gentile who gave a Jew a blow, struck a Jew, is liable to die, meaning liable to die by the hand of God, but not by the earthly court. Also, this is the reason that Moses in the Bible killed the Egyptian that struck a Jew. The story can be found in Exodus 2 verse 11. Now, what about circumcision? Should non-Jews circumcise themselves as Avram did? The RAMBAM states, only Avram and his descendants were commanded regarding circumcision, as it states in Genesis 17 verse 9 to 10. Keep my covenant, you and your offspring, circumcise every male. The descendants of Ishmael are excluded, as implied by Genesis 21 verse 12. It is through Yitzchak that your offspring will be called. Esau's descendants, Esav in Hebrew, are also excluded. For Yitzchak told Yaakov in Genesis 28 verse 4, may God grant Avram's blessing to you and your descendants, implying that only he is the true offspring of Abraham, who maintains his faith and his upright behavior. Thus, they alone are obligated in circumcision. So thus a non-Jew, whether Christian, Muslim or any other non-Jew, have no obligation at all to perform circumcision. And this is only a law for Jews to keep. And as I've explained earlier, this is not because Avram circumcised himself and his offspring, but we were later commanded by God through the hand of Moses to be circumcised on the 8th day. Now the RAMBAM moves on to the question whether or not a non-Jew should study the Torah. And the RAMBAM states, a non-Jew who studies the Torah is obligated to die. They, meaning the non-Jews, should be involved only in the study of their 7 mitzvot, their 7 commandments. Now, many of you might have heard this statement from many rabbis online, that non-Jews are not permitted to study Torah. What we learn from here is they should study the Torah, their Torah, meaning their instructions, which is these 7 laws of Noah. And this they should know well and with all its detail. Now, what does the RAMBAM mean by a Gentile who studies the Torah is obligated to die? Does this mean they deserve the death penalty? So as we learned, a non-Jew only deserves the death penalty if they don't keep any of the 7 laws of Noah. What the RAMBAM means here is obligated to die means that they should die by the hand of heaven. And this is also the law that my rabbi taught me, which can also be found in the same Mishnah Torah, Hilchot Melachim Umilchamoteim, in Halacha 8:10, which says that the Jew has an obligation to instruct non-Jews in the performance of these 7 commandments, these 7 laws of Noah, which I am trying to do in this video right now. The note here also adds that the Gentile who is well versed in the particular laws involved in the observance of these 7 laws of Noah is worthy of more respect than an unlearned Kohen Gadol, an unlearned high priest. This note, which is from Mary, also adds that most elements of the Torah are included within the 7 laws of Noah. For example, to observe the prohibition against the worship of false gods correctly, one must become aware of God's unity with creation, meaning you need to know the creation story. Otherwise, you will not appreciate who God is. So thus, to know the Torah or to know the Jewish Bible, that would be permitted and, according to some opinions, would be encouraged, since many of the 7 laws of Noah are connected to a lot what is said in the actual Torah. But to know the Torah, meaning the Jewish Torah, which is, Torah means Orah, instructions, to know the 613 commandments the Jews are meant to keep and should keep, that a non-Jew doesn't need to know at all. And that is what the RAMBAM means here, that if a non-Jew were to study this, then they should be obligated to die, meaning by the hand of heaven. Obviously, you can't kill a non-Jew for studying the Torah. The RAMBAM goes on to say, similarly, a non-Jew who rests even on a weekday, like let's say Sunday, observing that day as a Sabbath, as a Shabbat, is obligated to die. Needless to say, he is obligated for that punishment if he creates a festival for himself. The general principle, the RAMBAM states, governing these matters is they are not to be allowed to originate a new religion or create new commandments for themselves based on their own decisions. They may either become righteous converts, meaning converting to Judaism, and accept all the commandments, or retain their status without adding or detracting from them. If a Gentile studies the Torah, makes a Sabbath, or creates a religious practice, a Jewish court should beat him, punish him, and inform him that he is obligated to die. However, he is not to be executed. Meaning, in plain words, that non-Jews shouldn't keep Shabbat, the Sabbath. They shouldn't keep any Jewish festival, and they most certainly shouldn't start a new religion like Christianity or Islam and create new commandments and new festivals for themselves. They shouldn't do this. If they do this, however, they cannot be killed for doing this, since this doesn't violate the 7 laws of Noah. They have basically 2 options. They must either stay non-Jewish and keep the 7 laws of Noah, and if they do so, they will be rewarded in this world and in the world to come, or they must convert and become fully Jewish by undergoing the Orthodox conversion process to Judaism and accept upon themselves the 613 commandments, and in so doing receiving a great reward both in this world and in the world to come. If you listened carefully, you will have realized that the RAMBAM mentioned 2 things explicitly, meaning a non-Jew shouldn't study the Torah, meaning shouldn't study the 613 commandments that is only for Jews to keep, and certainly should know the 7 laws of Noah, and should know them well with all the details, as we've explained in this video. So definitely share this video to other non-Jews so that they will also know what the law is. And the other thing that RAMBAM mentioned is that they shouldn't keep Shabbat. They shouldn't keep the Sabbath, the rest day, that Jews are obligated to keep. But then the RAMBAM goes on to say that we, meaning we as Jews, should not prevent non-Jews who desire to perform one of the Torah's mitzvot, one of the Torah's commandments, meaning the 613 commandments, in order to receive reward from doing so, provided he performs it as is required. For example, if a non-Jew brings an animal to be sacrificed as a burnt offering, we should receive this non-Jew's sacrifice. If a non-Jew who observes the 7 laws of Noah gives charity, we should accept it from him. Now, in the notes, what the RAMBAM means here by the Torah's commandments, this is the 613 commandments that Jews must keep, excluding, like we mentioned earlier, Torah study and Shabbat. This a non-Jew shouldn't do. And then the RAMBAM stated, in order to receive reward from doing so. And that brings us to the question, is a non-Jew rewarded for keeping commandments that the non-Jew isn't commanded to keep? Does a non-Jew receive reward for doing such a thing? So the note says, a person who is not commanded to fulfill a mitzvah receives less reward from God for its observance than one who is commanded to do so. Meaning, if you are commanded to do something and you do it, then you get more reward. If you are not commanded, then not so. Nevertheless, even in the later instance, meaning someone who is not commanded to observe a commandment, but is doing it anyway, God acknowledges the person's deeds and grants him blessing, meaning he will be blessed for doing such a thing. Not necessarily receive a reward, but he will be blessed. The note adds here that the Gentile may only fulfill the commandments for the sake of reward. A non-Jew is forbidden to accept them as an obligation incumbent upon him. Thus, his intent must be the very opposite of a Jew who serves God for God's sake and not for his own. So basically, this note that we've read here means that a non-Jew could perform one of the 613 commandments, excluding Shabbat and Torah study, but they should do it with the intention of receiving reward, receiving blessing. Jews, on the other hand, we keep the commandments because that is what God told us to do. We're doing it because that's what God wants. We're doing it for God's sake. We're not doing it for the reward. We shouldn't be doing it for the reward. We should only be doing it to serve God. For non-Jews, they should do it only to receive the reward. The last statements of the RAMBAM in chapter 10 of Hilchot Melachim Umilchomotayim discusses exactly how this courts will work, how should Jewish courts govern non-Jews, how must judges be appointed, and several other disputes within the law system once everything is established, and also the way that we as Jews should relate to non-Jews. And I'll just end with that statement that the RAMBAM makes at the end of chapter 10. However, our sages commanded us to visit the non-Jews when ill, to bury the dead in addition to the Jewish dead, and support their poor in addition to the Jewish poor, for the sake of peace. And this is from a verse in Tehillim, in Psalms 145 verse 9. God is good to all, and his mercies extend over all his works. It also says in Proverbs chapter 3 verse 17, the Torah's ways are pleasant ways, and all its paths are peace. And this also shows us how important it is to treat everyone with respect, kindness, and dignity, which is really the basis of these 7 laws of Noah, which, like we said in this video, is laws that people should know naturally, to be good to one another, to be moral. And as is clear from this video, there's only 7 laws for non-Jews to keep. But if you do not keep these 7 laws, then the punishment is severe. And thus I will urge all non-Jews watching this, like this video and share this video with other non-Jews. And if you are someone watching this video and you don't want to keep just the 7 laws of Noah, but you want more, you don't want to serve God just for the reward, but you want to serve God for God's sake. You want to keep his Torah and accept upon yourself the 613 commandments contained within the Torah, then I would suggest that you convert to Orthodox Judaism. And if you want to know how to convert to Orthodox Judaism, what is the process of conversion to Orthodox Judaism from start to finish, then you should definitely watch this video next. Thanks for watching, and Yom Tov.